Today we're going to be experimenting and making our own homemade paints. We are going to be using these ingredients. So we have turmeric, frozen blueberries, green tea, ground coffee, and cinnamon. So each mixture consists of just a small amount of water that was boiled, and then I just added the ingredient. So you're gonna have to stir it up so it doesn't get chunky like that. But you can see this is the turmeric. I found that by boiling the water, it made the pigment a lot more vibrant. For the blueberries, I used frozen blueberries. The color just seemed to kind of show up a lot better with those versus just fresh blueberries. For the green tea, I actually broke open the tea bag, and you can see that the actual leaves are in there. So that kind of gave it a lot more color. For the coffee, I ground up the coffee into like almost a powder, and then added it to the hot water. And then the cinnamon, I just poured some into the cup with the hot water. Similar color to the coffee, but we'll see how it looks on the paper. Okay, so now let's test these out on paper and see the results. Alright, so first test is going to be turmeric. So like I said, make sure it's stirred up. Mine's been sitting for a little while, so it's no longer hot water. It's been kind of soaking in here for even longer, so that means it'll probably be even brighter than before when I tested it. So this, like any of these that we're using today, are going to be similar to watercolors. So the more water you add, the lighter the color will be, and the more of the ingredient that you add, the darker it'll be. So just like with watercolor, you want to start off with more water, and then you can always make it darker as you go. If you want to let that dry, and then we can kind of come back and layer over it, we can get an even brighter color. Okay, but that makes a really nice color, kind of like an ochre yellow color. Next we have frozen berries. So these are actually blueberries. You can probably get a similar result with different types of berries. So let's see the color here. That's very pretty. We'll come back at the end and see how they dry, because when I painted this earlier, it came out like this, and then later it looked a lot more blue. You can already see that it's starting to kind of change. I'm not sure if you guys can see that, but we'll kind of come back and see how the colors transform after they are dry. Now we're going to try green tea. So like I said, I broke open one of these bags, and that way it could really kind of soak up the color. Try not to get too many of the leaves on your brush, just the liquid. Okay, so it's pretty transparent. You could always add more green tea bags. I just did one, but it was a very small amount of water. So we'll come back and see how that looks when it dries, but right now it's pretty thin, but it could make a really nice light value if you wanted to use green tea. Okay, so now we have ground coffee. So like I said, I put it in a coffee grinder so that it's very thin and powdery, and then added a decent amount to a small amount of boiling water. Alright. So I got some of those grounds on the paper, that's okay. We'll see how it dries, if those stay on there, or if they kind of come off, we'll see. So it's pretty thin right now. Oops. We can always, like I said, add more. If you add more of the ingredient, less water, it'll be more vibrant. It really just depends on the ratio between the two. So yeah, we'll see what that looks like when it dries. Right now it's pretty thin, but we'll check back in. Okay, last one we have is cinnamon. I simply just poured the cinnamon into a small amount of boiled water. That's nice. Similar to the coffee in color, but it actually looks a little darker. I think because it's a finer powder, so the water really soaked up the pigment. But, alright, cool. Well, we'll see how that dries, and let's check back on those other ones and see how they turned out. Okay, so checking back in on our mostly dried homemade paints. So we have our turmeric. It's very vibrant. It's even close to my shirt, a little more orangey, more of like an ochre, like I said. It's not showing as well on my camera, but this green tea one turned out, it's actually very green looking. It's very pretty. It's a really nice like sage green color. The frozen blueberries actually look blue, like I said, once they dried, which is kind of cool because they started off looking more purplish, like a reddish purple. Alright, so these ones are still a little damp, but you can kind of see the difference between the ground coffee and the cinnamon. The ground coffee is a little bit more transparent. It's a little more of like a cool brown. We have like a warmer brown, and it's a little less transparent, a little more opaque. So yeah, I mean, even though they're both brown, now you have two nice different browns, and you have a good amount of bright colors over here. You can do a whole painting with food from your kitchen. Awesome. Okay, so I encourage you to, try what I did, try some different foods that you have at home, some different spices that you think would work. Try, experimenting with different amounts of the ingredient to the water. I suggest using the boiled water because it will definitely soak up the color more. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to try to create a painting after this so you can kind of see the result of what you can do with something like this. Here is my final painting using the homemade paints. So you can see that over here on this area I used the berries, and this is what like 2 or 3 layers of the paint looks like versus 1 layer. So you can see how different you can get the colors to look just by layering them. You have to wait till they dry sometimes and then kind of go over them to get different values. So same thing with the petals. I kind of came back in with some of the coffee just to add some value. And yeah, the colors can kind of mix together and make some really nice new colors as well.